Welcome to AZ TechCast, sponsored by the Arizona Technology Council, with your hosts, Steve Zdalstra and Karen Nowicki. AZ TechCast is dedicated to covering innovation and technology in Arizona and beyond. Broadcasted monthly, AZ TechCast invites leading experts to have real conversations about what is happening in the tech sector across the state of Arizona. From regional news to innovative startups, companies, and emerging technologies, AZ TechCast covers the critical issues and economic trends propelling the state's growing tech ecosystem.
From facial detection to taser technology, a variety of public safety technologies are being deployed and developed to reduce risk and help law enforcement officials make more informed decisions real time. But how can these technologies be implemented most effectively to produce more equitable outcomes, particularly for communities of color? Welcome to AZ TechCast, sponsored by Arizona Technology Council. I'm Karen Nowicki, president and owner of Phoenix Business RadioX, broadcasting live today from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona. AZ TechCast is dedicated to covering innovation and technology in Arizona and beyond. Broadcast monthly, AZ TechCast invites tech and business experts to have real conversations about what's happening across the state of Arizona. AZ TechCast discuss the critical issues, topics, and trends propelling the state's growing tech ecosystem. So join me please, today in giving a warm welcome to our featured guest. We have Lauren Chuck, North American Public Safety Lead with Accenture. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you.
So happy to have you. Looking forward to hearing from you. Jason Hartford, who's the Vice President of Axon Devices at Axon. Welcome, sir.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Likewise. That's a phenomenal background. Where are you zooming in from?
Well, we are a forward-thinking technology company, so some of our backgrounds reflect that futuristic appeal.
Yes. So chiming in from the moon today, apparently, or a satellite anyway. And with us as well is Gretchen Perry, Senior Director at Sloan. Welcome, Gretchen.
Thank you, Karen. Happy to be here.
And Robin Reed, co-founder and principal of Influent LLC, president and CEO of the Black Chamber of Commerce of Arizona, and one of our newest board members for the Arizona Technology Council. Welcome, Robin.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Likewise. And whatever that is to the right of you or maybe to the left of you, that looks like an incredible mural in your background.
It's a fantastic painting of Ray Charles done by a local artist, Randy Hedden. He's a speed painter. He actually painted this. It's 4 feet by 3 feet, and he painted in about 5 minutes, starting upside down, purely from memory.
I've seen some of those, kind of artists. Maybe it's even his artwork. That's phenomenal. I'm a stick figure girl. So thank you. And great shout out to the artist. And with us as well, of course, is Stephen Zdalstra. He's the council president and CEO for the AZ Tech Council. How are you?
Thank you, Karen. I'm terrific. It's great to be here. And we've got some extraordinary guests today on a very important topic to all Arizonans.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump into the conversation. We're going to explore how public safety technologies are evolving to prioritize social and racial equity. We have a lot of interesting content, as Steve just mentioned, so let's dive in. And I'd love to start, if we could, with like we do with every episode, giving each of you an opportunity to introduce yourself, the role that you play, and of course, the role your organization plays on behalf of our tech ecosystem and, of course, public safety. Lauren, are you comfortable with me saying you're going first?
I'm happy to go first.
Thank you.
So as Karen mentioned, my name is Lauren Chuck. I've been with Accenture for about 8 years. And I am our North America Analytics Lead for Public Safety. I actually live in Minneapolis, but prior to joining Accenture, I was a crime analyst for the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. And I come from a family of Minnesota police officers, so I didn't stand much of a chance in getting out of this space. At Accenture, I've supported the delivery of public safety programs from state, local, federal, and international levels. And today, I'm excited to be here to share some of the work that we're doing with my current client, the Seattle Police Department, who's experiencing some of the similar challenges that Arizona departments are going through right now. Within Arizona, we work as Accenture at the state, local, and county levels across health, human services, public service, and then particular to today's topic, we deployed the public services portal for the Arizona Department of Public Safety, which allows community members to receive access to public services quickly and easily. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you. Robin, can we have you go next? And then we'll have Jason up and finish up with Gretchen and Stephen.
Absolutely. Robin Reed, I'm co-founder and principal of Influent. We're a corporate consulting and executive coaching firm, so we focus on helping companies optimize strategy, execution, and talent. In addition, I am the president and CEO of the Black Chamber of Arizona. And I think relevant to today's conversation, I also serve on the Use of Force and Disciplinary Review Board for Phoenix Police Department.
Fantastic. You're a busy man. All right. Who's up? Jason?
I'm Jason Hartford. I have been with Axon Enterprise now 5 years. I live in Scottsdale and part of a company that's headquartered, worldwide company that's headquartered right here in Scottsdale. So I lead our connected devices business at Axon. That includes all of our body-worn cameras, our in-car camera system we call Axon Fleet, interview room cameras, and then a whole set of cloud and mobile apps that help manage these devices. Now, we're just part of one highly interconnected ecosystem. We have a very large enterprise cloud software group that helps our users make informed decisions, make them more efficient and effective. And then as well, we build the TASER device, a non-lethal weapon for public safety. And our mission is very straightforward. Our mission is to protect life. And in the last few years, we've really expanded that mission to include protecting truth. And that's all around increasing transparency, accelerating justice, and then building for racial equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Great introduction. Thank you. Gretchen.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everyone. I'm Gretchen Perry from Sloan Consulting. We are a 12,000-person consulting firm with offices across the globe. In our Phoenix office, we serve our Arizona clients with about 150 consultants. We help clients with everything from setting their business strategy and technology strategy to the implementation of those projects. One thing that's different about Sloan, we're a local model consulting firm, so our talent works and lives in the same place. And we're personally invested in our clients' outcomes. In Arizona, we've helped agencies with their cloud journeys, with digital transformation of licensing and other processes, and also with COVID dashboards. My background is in law enforcement. I've spent 17 years working with dozens of police departments across the country. And at Sloan, we're working with justice and public safety agencies across the U.S. on improving policing operations and data-driven decision-making. So thanks for having me. Pleased to be here.
Glad you're here. And I always like to give Steve Zdalstra an opportunity to introduce yourself, of course, and the Arizona Technology Council. We might be silly to think that everybody who comes to our shows already knows who you are and the organization that you serve, but let's pretend they don't know. Who are you, Stephen?
Steve Zdalstra. I'm the president and CEO of both the Arizona Technology Council and our foundation, the SciTech Institute. The Tech Council is a statewide trade association representing around 750 member companies. I'm happy to say all of our speakers today are with member companies. So thank you and welcome to you all. It's great to have you here. The Tech Council does really four things. We do public policy advocacy. So this is a very busy time of the year for us. We're working down at the legislature. I had my policy committee meeting this morning. We do about 150 events a year. Had an after 5 last night at PADT. We have an array of publications and reports that we do on what's going on in the industry. We save our members money by negotiating lower cost products and services on their behalf. So a comprehensive trade association business model serving technology-based businesses across Arizona. And by the way, the DEI aspect of today's discussion is really important to the Arizona Technology Council. It's an area that we've focused a lot of attention on. It's important to our industry. And so I'm so happy to have these experts here today to share with us what's going on in public safety and how DEI plays a role.
I'd like to tag onto that. Having so many business owners and executive leaders come through the doors here each week at Phoenix Business Radio. We've had DEI conversations oftentimes off air right? Or in the boardrooms. And I'm so pleased consistently. I'm hearing and I'm seeing that we are now forward facing. And this is a conversation that we are really, I think, as Arizona leaders, making a positive impact to be very inclusive and, of course, be here for our community. So thank you for modeling that and giving us an opportunity to have this conversation as it relates to today's topics. With that in mind, let me start with the first question and prompt. I also acknowledge that, not everybody may have something to chime in depending on what portion of this conversation you represent, but please just jump in and chime in when you feel that it's appropriate. We like to do it that way best. For purposes of this conversation, we're going to use the term public safety technologies to define technological innovations that are helping law enforcement officials make more informed decisions, again, in real time. So with that in mind, what public safety technologies are each of your organizations or your clients currently developing and deploying to achieve this objective? And I'm just going to leave it open and let y'all jump in there.
I went first the first time, but I'm happy to go again.
You own it. Go for it, Lauren. Thank you.
Great. Well, at Accenture, along with our clients, we're developing custom reporting and analytics solutions that help them consistently report on department operations to support trust and legitimacy. So being able to have access to clear and clean data to help them understand the things that the department are doing, and also leveraging technology to reduce the manual time that's spent on tasks. I think it's not a secret that we're losing people to technology in some ways, and so we want to do that smartly and help them find the areas where it's okay to do that and the others where it's not. We're helping them understand how best to deploy their resources based on operational needs. And then we actually even take data from Jason's company, Axon, to help understand how we're doing to following policy, right? So with particular incidents, we would always expect body camera or dash cam footage to be there. And we use analytics and reporting to be able to understand, how that's happening.
I'll piggyback on what Lauren said. We're seeing a lot of investments right now in different tools and technologies, and they center around application modernization, data integration, right? And data automation, process, task automation. And we're really excited to see all of our police agencies actually leverage some of these technologies that help reduce what Lauren was talking about, the manual processing, the duplicate data entry, the cumbersome and time lags that persist in some of our public safety processes. And we're also excited to see automation applied at the data level when we think about advances in intelligent document processing and other intelligent automation tools that allow us to take data and share it at its source with other agencies. So really excited to see what's happening, especially as we can leverage technology to address some of the recent challenges with current labor shortages across the country, and in particular in public safety. And all of this to say that when we're talking with our clients, it's really important as they're evaluating different tools and technologies to start with the end in mind. What is the business objective that you want to accomplish? What is the business outcome that you want to generate? And then we can design the tools and technologies to get there so that we don't face, kind of this unfettered sprawl that we see in some agencies where we purchase and implement a specific tool for a specific use case rather than thinking about enabling business capabilities across the enterprise.
First of all, it's so encouraging to hear those comments. And this space is one that's super challenging, and we all know it. But it's a pretty exciting mission. And the fact that both of your work is about just allowing people to do the job that they want and helping them be more efficient, super exciting. So I'll talk a little bit about the back end that provides that data that you help use and organize. 5 years ago, I joined Axon, and first week found out that our next generation body-worn camera was going to have LTE capabilities and bring us into real time. That same week, I found out that no one in the company knew anything about LTE, and we had a hard climb to develop that capability in a short period of time.
Jason, in case our listeners don't know what those three letters mean.
Oh, yes. So I'll just say a similar technology or a modem that allows you to be connected just like over your cell phone to a cellular network and transmit video, transmit audio, and voice communications. So our traditional workflow is very, very much about compliance. Hey, I want to reflect that the work I'm doing is above board and it's transparent for the community and transparent for our users. When we introduced LTE, we opened up this whole like, hey, this technology can be relevant to decision making. This was new. And I think the big thing that stood out was when sometimes you have a technology that's looking for a use case. In this case, we spent a lot of time with agencies, and what was resounding was this concept of protecting the environment and protecting the community and really kind of having the users back. And not that you would be intrusive seeing a live stream of someone who's recording, but it was an opportunity for them to have support and situational awareness. So we have an app that transmits real-time locations when one of our body-worn cameras or in-car systems are actively recording, and then allows, when you're actively recording, for a user on that app to tap in and view a live stream. And so it's been super effective. It just helps get more eyes on the scene and efficiently deploy resources. And it radically changed our business to think about what our technology has to be like in real time. And from that, I'll just mention one other technology, back to efficiency. We added AI elements to it so that we could do transcription based on the words that were spoken from the officer during these interactions. And because we had LTE, we could do transcription very quickly, take that content off the camera, put it in the cloud, perform transcription, and have it available for officers when they went back to their vehicle to start their report writing. And what we found is that in the studies we've seen is, some officers are spending 50% of their time writing reports and not doing the jobs that they want to do and serve. So these are just ways we took a real-time technology and applied it to efficiency as well.
Jason, a little bit of a follow-up question to that. We had Rick Smith speak, the CEO of Axon, speak at his avatar spoke at our CEO retreat a couple.
That's always a lot of fun.
I've
met the robot.
It was really cool. You've been with the company almost this entire time. You manufactured tasers, and then when you started getting into body cameras, you had to start storing all this massive amount of data, particularly the video. You became sort of a cloud company, right? And you're storing massive amounts of data. Could you talk a little bit about that transition and the impact that it had on your business model and your organization?
Yeah, Rick is a visionary by design, our CEO, and here we have this highly sensitive data that's incredibly secure. There's no way to delete the content once it's captured, and it's secure all the way to the cloud. And then it's highly restricted in terms of who can see it, who can manage it, and how it's used and throughout the criminal justice system, and really released publicly. So Rick's vision was, hey, it makes no sense to have these on DVDs and literally have a DVD department burning DVDs. And he said, we're cloud only, and we are going to operate in the cloud. And if you want to use our workflow, it's cloud centric. And we had a lot of naysayers and detractors and slow adopters. And even as we've grown internationally, there's huge data sovereignty rules, but we've managed those effectively. And that kind of long vision has helped us now, like no one can think of an alternative. It's just so great to have it in the cloud where it's safe, secure, and available to be pulled down and used when it's appropriate.
Jason, I'll definitely say having body cams in the cloud was something that really opened the door, I think, for a lot of public safety agencies to be comfortable with cloud, where even 5 years ago, it was a challenge and a struggle to get them to kind of understand, no, this is safe. But as we've sort of changed as a society and demanding having that video, right, cloud is required. And so it's really definitely opened doors to be interested in other areas, right, that aren't just video, that cloud enables.
So Gretchen mentioned some of the automation going on, and many of these technologies are automated, but there are also that are still require human decision making. Can any of you talk about, that differentiation between what you can automate, what's currently automated, and what still requires human interaction?
I can take that. One of the things we're seeing is the combination of business and technology teams designing processes, implementing processes, the ongoing maintenance of processes. Historically, we've seen kind of IT, the business defines the requirements, throw them over to IT implements them. But we're seeing the integration of artificial intelligence and human intelligence as when they come together, that's when we can affect real change. And so leveraging human beings to ensure that the model is achieving the intended objectives. Like we have to continually look and assess models to make sure that they're achieving the outcomes that we intended. We also need human beings to review certain thresholds for data accuracy. Computers aren't the accuracy is very, very high, but it's not 100%. So we have to make sure that human beings are reviewing decision paths and certain thresholds. And then also in the spirit of this conversation, to overcome bias, right? Disparity doesn't necessarily equal bias. So we have to look, human beings are needed to look at the data, understand the data, and see where do we need to address things in the criminal justice system or in our department that might be experiencing bias right now.
Well, and as I've heard it said, data drives change, but technology drives data. One of the things that I see often in the process of doing disciplinary or use of force reviews is how valuable the body-worn cameras are. Because with the proliferation of cell phone cameras, we know the general public is giving us a wonderful view, but it's only from that perspective. It's from that side of the equation. And so knowing that today's body-worn camera technology can actually backtrack to before an interaction began, that it can track back, Jason, if I'm correct, 2 minutes prior. I know that, I've reviewed several cases in which it's very clear. They'll tell you there's no sound here yet, but the camera turned on automatically. So we found that right blend between human interaction and technology, because obviously in the heat of a moment, expecting a human being to have presence of mind to turn on a device when they are focused on public safety, I think that's a pretty heavy lift if you really want that to happen. So to have technology that automatically does that for you so that they can focus on the task at hand has made it really beneficial in the review process to get a very well-rounded and comprehensive view of a law enforcement interaction rather than simply from the perspective someone in the general public holding a cell phone. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that it's easiest to come to what I believe are fair and equitable decisions in those cases when we have a well-rounded, literally well-rounded view of a situation.
That's great. So great lead in. I'll comment on some of those, what we've done around that. In the body-worn camera space, you've seen it. Like, it's just tragic when those cameras aren't on when they should be. And we talked about a continuum. First we start with policy, making sure that we work with agencies on model policies where, our preference is the camera's on at the beginning of the shift. We make the camera very easy to use and operate to start recording and very deliberate to stop recording. With that policy, we have applications that actually monitor compliance. We call it Axon Performance, and it can help train officers. Hey, you got a call for service. The camera should have been on within 2 minutes. Hey, let's talk through this. So it's a very constructive way to do it. But like you said, we recognize this in the heat of the moment. The last thing anyone's going to think about is making sure I double press my body-worn camera. So Axon Signal is a number of different technologies that automatically activate the cameras, whether it is you're in a vehicle, you open the door, or you turn on the light bar, or you hit a certain speed. It's going to automatically activate the cameras in the vehicle and on the officers. We also have a device, Axon Signal Sidearm, It's a sensor that's placed on a holster. So if you draw your firearm, it's going to automatically trigger cameras to go on for the user and users around them in close proximity. During the last 2 years, as you can expect, it's been pretty transformational for all of us and within Axon as well. In the fall of 2020, we had engineers who said, hey, how can I really make a difference with what's happening around me? We shut down Axon for 2 weeks, and we did what we called a sprint for justice. And we said, come up with ways that we can implement solutions that actually make a difference right now. And one of those was called video recall. Now, it's still optional, but it allows a video to be, as long as the camera's powered on, to be running in the background. So that 2-minute buffer now could be the entire shift. Now, we've tightly controlled that and made it very restrictive so that it respects privacy. But within a week of that being implemented, we had situations where there was uncertainty in a body-worn camera recording, and an agency that turned it on literally within a week had an incident that the officer forgot to turn on his camera, not turn it on, but actually start recording. And we had that video to be captured and used to explain what happened in the situation. So pretty transformational.
I love what you said earlier around, the need and the holes that needed to be filled, and then finding the technology for that. That's my version of what you shared. But how fantastic is that? Because we know there's a lot of holes that need to be filled, and that's really what all of your organizations are looking to do from that place of transparency and honesty, and of course, public safety. We have so much more to talk about. I'm ecstatic that we have you for another 30 minutes or so, but let's go to our first commercial, if we could, please, and acknowledge Arizona Commerce Authority, who is the AZ TechCast 2022 innovation sponsor. The Arizona Commerce Authority is the state's leading economic development organization with a streamlined mission to grow and strengthen Arizona's economy.
Our streamlined pro-business approach helps you achieve more by putting less between you and future success. Less red tape, lower taxes, less distance separating you from the tech leaders of tomorrow. This innovative ecosystem will supply your business with tools and resources to compete in the 21st century and beyond. But your future is more than just business success. In Arizona, the lifestyle you want is at your fingertips. Explore cities known for their Southwest heritage and modern vision. Enjoy beautiful scenery and endless outdoor activities on land, water, or snow. And if you're looking for a little friendly competition, we've got plenty of teams to choose from. With constant sunshine, vibrant culture, and natural wonder, Arizona provides a style of living that's entirely unique. People from all over the world call our state home. From student leaders who fill the classrooms of our top-ranked universities, to a skilled and abundant workforce that's ready for what's next. To the neighbors, friends, and peers we interact with daily, Arizonans are united by a pioneering spirit that moves us forward. So as you look to the future, know that it's filled with the perfect balance of innovation and high-quality living that makes life better here.
I've been here since 1979 as a young 8th grader, and every time I hear that commercial, even though it's long, it gets me excited and extremely proud about being part of Arizona. I don't think they missed a beat, didn't they, in how they describe how fortunate we are to be here. So thank you for giving us an opportunity to give a shout out to Arizona Commerce Authority. Because this conversation is taking place during Black History Month as we do the live broadcast, would you please share how your organization or your clients are working to achieve more equitable public safety outcomes, particularly within communities of color? I know we've touched on some of it already, but let's see where the rest of the conversation goes with that prompt.
Oh, I'd love to share this story. So, Steve is actually part of the Community Collaborative, an organization we created to bring together many of our community organizations, just to share ideas, thoughts, and and calendars, oddly enough. But in that process, we also created a web series. And one of our first guests on the web series was City of Phoenix Deputy Chief Sean Connolly and Executive Director of the Zion Institute, a woman, Sean Pearson. And he told this wonderful story. So Zion is located in South Central Phoenix. Its mission is to work to end generational poverty among marginalized communities. So that's still going to be predominantly people of color. When we brought them on the show, it was impressive just to hear the financial commitment that the city of Phoenix had made to this organization and to their efforts. But probably the most impactful thing that I heard was Deputy Chief Connolly said, we invested years in this community in building trust. And when I knew that we had moved the needle, was I drove my car into the neighborhood and the kids ran toward the car, not away from it. And that stuck with me because that's that real life progress that we're looking for. I mean, data is great. We got a lot of tech people on the call, and data is great, but data is only good if you can then track it all the way down to the people it impacts. And that to me is very impressive when you see that when we're changing trust, when we're changing mindset. So that's one of the ways in which we're doing is we're trying to shine a light on those positive situations. I think that that's critical during these times, that we don't find ourselves limiting ourselves to only hearing the provocative news, the volatile news, but that we're also putting forth the effort to seek out these other stories because they're happening with great frequency as well.
That's a great story. I love that. I think one of the things that we're doing, and Robin, I think we touched on this on the beginning, right, was using data, but having those actual outcomes, right, which I think is something that Seattle has been doing really well. And so I know we kind of go to the case study question, I think, later on, but SPD was put in a tough situation similar to some of the organizations in Arizona where they didn't actually have the data practices to say whether or not issues did or didn't exist. And so they spent the time and investment to actually put those data structures and those rules in place. So now they're able to ask or to answer really interesting and innovative questions, right? And so to the question about how we can apply equity and fairness across the communities, one of the use cases that they're currently exploring along with us right now is how do we identify areas or communities that are potentially over or under policed? And so how can we make sure that the vehicles and squad cars that are spending time in particular areas are actually doing active work, right? How do we make sure that we aren't just putting people in certain locations when calls aren't coming in? Because that's something that I found has really led to communities feeling like they're being over policed. And so actually using the data that comes in from GIS, matching it up with dispatch data to understand whether or not those things are happening, and then make meaningful changes if it is.
You know, Lauren, I have a question with that. That fascinates me. I love data like that. It fascinates me, but you almost have to be careful of getting caught in the chicken and egg, right? Is there lower incidence because there's greater police presence? You know, which exactly. Is causing which to happen?
Exactly.
Is there a way to drill that data down further where you're able to pull answers out that create greater clarity there?
I think so. I think one of the things, we actually are in a really great position with Seattle. And so all the work that we do is driven by, we sort of refer to him as a mad scientist, but a research specialist. And so his name is Lauren Atherley. And so one of the things that he does actually is brings in an academic presence from actually around the world to help us understand those things. And so his team is able to understand crime trends, right, that are actually occurring previously. So if we do find an area that's like, hey, why are there cars here all the time? We can actually look at previous crime trends and say, okay, well, is that justified? And then what happens if we take them out? Do we have more calls coming in? We obviously don't necessarily want to see no calls coming in when cars are sitting there, because then isn't there somewhere else that maybe you should be? And so finding that balance, you're right, is tricky, and it's not instant. It's a game of trial and error for sure. I love the question.
One of the things we're trying to do too is to follow on to Lauren's is helping our public safety clients see their data as a strategic asset and see that creating that transparency and putting data sets available, making data sets available publicly, not only provides benefits by reducing public disclosure requests, but also that transparency alone creates better trust in community relations. So to bring that all together is really, I love, Robin, what you said, because everything that we're trying to do from a business and technology perspective is to develop and maintain that trust. And it's the basic foundational aspects of trust, right? Transparency, accountability, communication, all of those things.
So that brings up, thank you, Gretchen. That brings up a really interesting thing here. So on the corporate side, I see a lot of energy and effort being put into DEI. One of the first things you have to do to really go on that journey is every company's got to take that first look inward, right? You can't solve outside problems if you don't understand what's happening inside your own organization. Unfortunately, we've also created this monster called cancel culture that if a company acknowledges the results of that inward look, they're worried about being punished for it. I have a client who spent $100,000 on a DEI audit, if you will. The audit came back. It was not favorable, but they didn't expect it to be favorable. But it was unfavorable enough that they ran analytics and algorithms on it and determined that if they went public with it, it would cost them another $1 million in market share. And so they didn't share it even internally, like a select few executives had it. So we can't create change if you don't acknowledge the problem that you're changing. How does that work on the law enforcement side? So we've got this data, everything that happens out there isn't true, but everything isn't false either. How do we avoid that, I told you so syndrome from the public of, yeah, we told you these things were happening. And because it doesn't become universal, just because you can prove it happened in zip code 123 doesn't mean it's happening in zip code 456. How do we create that space for the data to be shared constructively so that we can make the changes we need to make?
I think that's a good point, Robin. It's like there is, and I know you mentioned you have a lot of police officers around you in your life as well. And it's not always a culture that's open to change and open to acknowledgement of doing things differently. And so when we do find those things, it's like, how do we understand them, accept them, and then change them and understand if the changes we're making, are impactful. And it is definitely some of the tough conversations around the dinner table that have come up over the last few years, right? It's like, is the way that we've always done it really the way that we should keep doing it?
It's also something that we don't typically associate with business, but I believe leadership has to have courage. It's important. And by the way, they may have to make a significant investment because this is going to be critical going forward. And at the end of the day, stockholders, stakeholders, employees, other people are watching. And if companies are not doing what they need to do, they're going to pay the price in the longer run, I believe. So it does take courage in the business community. And it's not, again, typically when you think of law enforcement, you think of courage, or military, you think of courage. But I think it's required in this scenario. Jason, I hesitate to bring this issue up, but recently, Taser has been in the news in a significant way because of the incident that we are all aware of. What are the things that Axon is doing to try to assure, better and more equitable outcomes using your technology?
That's great. And just listening to everyone, I'll tell you a little bit about our journey and Robin's comments about looking internally first and having a customer base that, you're walking a fine line. And we've done that for 25 years, a non-lethal weapon, you're walking a fine line if you, by just having a device like that. So we also have a large presence in Seattle. Our Seattle office is at the base of Capitol Hill and between Capitol Hill and Seattle PD headquarters. So, in early 2020, I'd be on Zoom calls. We have employees that live in the community and, hey, let me go on mute because the sirens are too loud, or, hey, I think I'm going to have to drop from the call because there's too much smoke in the air and it's starting to hurt. The tear gas is starting to hurt my eyes. So it was very real. And in May of that year, we had a bunch of employees in our leadership team just start to brainstorm, like, how can we internalize this and start to make a difference? So I think I said at the beginning, our mission is to protect life. And we added these elements to about accelerating justice and also centering on racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. Our first step was we hired a VP of community impact, Regina Holloway. She came from the Chicago community and had a long history of working with community and with law enforcement. And it was so refreshing. And we did a lot of soul searching and looking internally. The next step was we created a community advisory coalition. And that was made up of, community members, equity-focused practitioners, non-for-profit, and then folks from academia. And then our product teams went and met with the advisory coalition, and we'd walk through what we were intending to do. And the perspectives that were shared, it was pretty transformational and humbling for us. And I think the main output, and it goes back into some of my colleagues' work, is we put a lot more, one of the first things we did was we focused on better data collection, accountability, investigation, and compliance around use of force, and making sure that the telemetry of our devices and our software workflow, we could bring that to bear just to explain incidents more fully. So I just got an email yesterday where I saw 7 major products all lined up for reviews with the Community Impact Coalition, scheduled all throughout 2022. And that's really exciting and humbling for me because when you sit in an office coding, you just need to bring the community in, and you need to walk a mile so that you're making the best balanced decisions for everyone.
I think that the data governance thing that you bring up is something that's so critical, at least that we deal with, right? Where none of these things that we're talking about from a technology and data perspective are possible if the data can't be trusted and isn't clean, right? So it's like as Robin sits on the board for use of force review, if you hand him a mess of data, it's like he's not going to be able to understand and trust that. And so we spend a lot of time making sure that we actually help our departments understand how to match up, those disparate data systems so that we can actually have an entire picture to be able to hand to somebody like Robin, right, who's on the review board, to understand, how did this call come in the first place? What did the officer think they were going to? Were they told that there was potentially a crisis or a mental health situation occurring? Is that officer trained to handle that? Did they use force? Is it justified? And it's like before, everything was sitting separately. And I think that's something about law enforcement that maybe the general public doesn't really understand, is that there's a lot of systems and they don't talk to each other.
Yeah,
Lauren, I'll add to that, because I can tell you there have been situations in which the news portrays a situation completely different than the facts that I'm able to see. So situations in which they're, general public often can tell you exactly how they think the officer should have reacted in a situation, or wants to know why their gun was drawn when they went. But that's because the news is picking up the story 5 minutes into the altercation. It's not picking up the story from the 911 call, but I hear the 911 call. So I understand that they were being made aware that there was a weapon involved, and there's a potential that somebody was injured or harmed by a weapon. Then now we can go to procedure, right? Officers are trained to behave certain ways under certain situations when they perceive a certain threat to exist. And so that technology, when you start marrying all the technology, the 911 call being recorded, so I can hear exactly what the officer was told, not what the news station thought they heard from somebody who isn't going to be named until later, and all that. I'm getting the facts, right? And so I think that's really, it is very important that when you are able to blend that data together to paint that full picture, because we know, unfortunately, we've created a society where the court of public opinion has a lot of power, even in the face of evidence that says it shouldn't. We've created that. So that's really powerful. Jason, I have a question for you. Obviously, we know that tasers, I'll use that as the generic name because I have no idea whether it was your product or not in the recent situation, but we know that's not the first time we've had a situation like that, right? We had Oscar Grant in Oakland years ago, created the movie Fruitvale Station. Interestingly enough, I'm from Oakland. I used to go to that BART station all the time. My best friend was he's retired now, but he was an officer and he was the firearms instructor for Oakland Police Department. So when that was happening, I was getting real feedback internally. I do believe that companies like Axon have gone to great lengths to make the look and the feel of a taser so unique that it should eliminate the ability to mistake one for another. In addition to, one is worn crossbody, it's yellow, it's got a thicker, all the things that were being done to avoid the situations that we've seen happen at least twice. Any thoughts on are there other iterations of this that we can consider?
My peer who's is in charge of the taser business at Axon, the weapons confusion topic, they have taken that to heart, and they're making sure in our next generations of products, it's very deliberate how they think, both physical look and feel, but also, whether it's haptic like vibrations or audible sounds, there's means to differentiate that are proof positive. And we encourage like this crossbody where you wear it on the opposite side. It's very difficult to be confused, but in the moment, we can all think about our personal instances in our lives where we don't remember, we react. And so it's super important to always be aware and thinking about how can I triple down to make sure that there is no weapons confusion. We want to be the non-lethal choice. And when appropriate, absolutely. Our Uber mission is to obsolete the bullet. If we can be the first choice, and that will come over time, it's a long journey. But weapons confusion is an area where we took all of those things to heart, and I can tell you that they're being incorporated in future generations. And we've doubled down on training and making sure that means that officers have just in their training policies encourage them.
We need to let Karen take us to commercial.
It's such a rich conversation. And of course, I don't want to be a host. I want to be a panelist because I have so many things to ask and add, but we'll have to have segment 2 and 3 and 4 with all of you. On that note, please give us the opportunity to thank our 2022 Tech Advocate sponsor, JDH Insights, a leader in coaching and executive development. JDH Insights is committed to helping organizations cultivate and leverage their most important and complex asset, their humans.
Thank you, JDH Insights, for being our 2021 Tech Advocate sponsor. A leader in coaching and executive development, JDH Insights is committed to helping organizations cultivate and leverage their most important and complex asset, their humans. Visit jdhinsights.com to enhance leadership and improve team dynamics to take your business to the next level.
Excellent. All right, so let's talk about education. What Arizona educational institutions and organizations are helping train next generation leaders on how to responsibly use public safety technologies? How are they incorporating social and racial equity education into their training? And again, I just open it up to any and all of you.
And I'd like to just add to that, do any of you work with academic institutions on R&D that help support your efforts in developing the next generation of technology, or practices or methodologies?
I'll go with that one. Well, everyone thinks. And it's not local, and I apologize for that. But from that perspective of academia, as I mentioned previously, our product owner is obviously the director of analytics and research at Seattle, but is also a professor, I think, at Seattle University, and then is also getting his PhD at Cambridge for public safety or criminology. And so that network feeds into everything that we do, for all the models that we develop, all of the experts and things like that, so that we're taking into account all of those things, so it can feed back for operational needs, so that they can report back to the community that these are the steps that we're taking to make sure that we're doing the best we can every day, so that they accept that trust back for the department.
I'll jump in. We have a across the country relationship with academia. And as I mentioned before, different universities around the country that specialize in either public safety or this whole area of diversity and inclusion, and just bringing insights. We've more highly engaged over the last 2 years. I'll call out one of my colleagues, Carl Schultz. He joined us from another Arizona tech company. And has an aerospace background, highly technical. He was a former lecturer at ASU and brought that ASU linkage back to Axon. So we have different practicums and different relationships with ASU where we may give a group a project to work on that is usually early R&D development. It might be a hard technical problem that we're trying to solve. And we'll have both interns or these project teams work on projects that are could turn into something and may not, but it's super valuable for those students to understand the questions we ask, the emphasis we put on foundational technology to help deliver solutions. And we run the gamut. I mean, we have cloud-based software and incredibly technical cloud architects, real-time architects, and communication architects. But also, the TASER is pretty old school electrical engineering, and we build that, right here in Arizona. So I just call out ASU is a good partner of ours.
I'll piggyback on that, Jason. ASU School of Criminology and Criminal Justice, they have their Public Safety Innovation Lab, where they're doing really interesting research on reimagining public safety and public safety models. And I just say, as we're looking at this industry changing, which has been pretty stagnant, the way that we provide public safety services has been pretty consistent over centuries. But our calls for service are changing somewhat. And so we need to think about how do we get the right professional to the right call, and reimagining how we address our public safety needs in terms of mental health calls and law enforcement calls and other types of disturbances is really important as we develop a model that's responsive to our community.
Public safety, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I'm going to add to that, but from a slightly different perspective. I think, yes, wonderful to get our academic institutions involved on the technology side, but I don't think they can do that in a vacuum. I'm a firm believer. Community leaders, people that are embracing the technology relative to law enforcement, they should find their local police department and do a recruit experience. Go spend 4 or 5 hours feeling what it's like to live in a uniform, if you will, and encounter some of those things, because your perspective will change. It doesn't matter who you are, what your background is. I believe your perspective will change. Even if your outlook is to create technology, that technology will be based on life experiences versus what you can make technology do. We often create technologies that aren't practical. They're cool, but they're not practical for use. So I think we need to make sure that we don't exclude the human component to it as well.
That's a great point, Robin. In the beginnings, when we were actually learning how to count uses of force incidents and whether or not tasers came out, we realized that our team wasn't familiar with tasers. And so, we have a room full of data engineers and tech guys. We said, get up. We walked down the hall to the woman who led the taser training, and she pulled it out and sparked it, and they all backed up. But it's like, you need to know how it works. You need to know what you're counting. You need to know what one pull does or two. And it is really important. So it's not quite to the ride along level. I think we sent them on a couple, but that was an interesting day to help them just see and understand what it's like.
Well, public safety has always been a key issue for citizens, and as a consequence for politicians as well. is some politicians run on public safety, particularly at the local level, in cities and towns. What else can law enforcement agencies or even private sector do to improve public safety technologies or methods and the relationships with the communities, particularly communities of color?
I'll jump in on this one. I talked about earlier our Community Advisory Council. One area that we've invested in, it was in the works, but then when 2020 came, it became like so relevant, and that's VR training. And we use our Community Advisory Board and our product teams to create a ton of scenarios. So these are VR headsets that we've created the content in partnership with these boards and other members to really understand these situations where there's community encounters, and it's atypical, but it's a big part of their day. So it might be mental health, might be a suicide prevention, it might be a person with dementia. Understanding and being in context there, that is so important for situational awareness and taking through a very immersive VR experience. This is one where we had a lot of support because training and equipping and putting someone in context where escalation could happen quickly, and you have the opportunity to be trained before you're out in the field. And that's just been so critical. So our Community Advisory Board has helped craft some of those scenarios and content so we better equip officers before they ever set foot out on patrol.
I've actually done that VR use case of yours, Jason, at the probably 2 years ago now, at the Axon event in Arizona, and it's great. I mean, it changes everything in your perspective.
Yeah, we have a whole curriculum now, whether it's, let's say we have an autism event, or we have mental health, or we have suicide with someone with a knife who's more interested in harming themselves, and like, how do you react? And doing it with VR is a great first step, because you can get so many more repetitions in different scenarios. So
what a great use of that technology.
Yes.
Karen, you want to take us home to our final question?
I will, yes. This, again, has been just an incredible conversation. In closing, we'd love to hear from you around the names of minority-owned businesses or minority-led Arizona initiatives that you admire, that our listeners can consider donating to or otherwise supporting and getting involved with.
Well, I'll come back to the one I mentioned earlier, which is the Zion Institute, which is actually creating another organization within that called The Well. And it's really, again, it's commitment to ending generational poverty while at the same time creating greater sense of community. So the fact that you have a predominantly Black organization serving a predominantly Black community that is working hard to bridge the gap between law enforcement and people of color. Another one I would recommend would be Herozona. Herozona is an organization that has created something called the Bridge Forum. Bridge Forum has been around for 20 years. They bring police chiefs from all over the country to come together to talk out issues. In fact, I think about 5 or 6 years ago, I invited Axon, and I know they've been involved since then. But it's great because we bring police chiefs in, and they talk openly about ideas for change. So we know that there's that thought process is there. I'll finish with this last little bit. We just have to remember, we need to approach this as an initiative, not an incident. So instead of consistently responding to an incident that's in the news, let's make it an initiative so that we can stay on course.
Thank you, Robert.
I love that. I'll go a couple that our Phoenix team mentioned. Community Legal Services is a crucial organization in the Valley serving marginalized communities. The Agnes Centers for Domestic Solutions has a unique approach that we admire to assisting domestic violence victims. And then the Arizona Community Foundation manages a great list of Black-led organizations to promote and support on their website. And I would just love to end with all of this work to say, and I think you've heard it from all of us, is that the efforts we're trying to create is to get the right information to the right people at the right time, but also to produce the right outcome. And that right outcome isn't always achieved. And so we have to figure out what are the other factors that create that disconnect from the right information to the right people at the right time to the right outcome.
Lauren or Jason, any organizations that you want to give a shout out to and help encourage us to connect with?
I'll go ahead and let Jason have the Arizona plug at the end. So while we're not working directly with minority-owned businesses, we do work with some of the local nonprofits in Arizona on volunteering to create pathways to social equity and sustainable futures. But one of the things that is in Arizona, but is also actually a national initiative of Accenture, is the Black Founders Development Program to help Black entrepreneurs advance, grow their technology business through greater, more direct access to capital, mentorship, strategic connections, business partners, clients, and all that's available online for specific parts to Arizona.
And very quickly, I'll just add the Az100 Club. So it supports all city, county, and even tribal public safety organizations. What they do in particular is provide wellness training, scholarships, and monetary support to families that have lost a responder in the line of duty.
Excellent. I just have made a list of all these organizations as future guests on Phoenix Business Radio. So stay tuned. We need to give the opportunity for them to share their wisdom and knowledge as well. Incredible conversation clearly today. I just jotted down a few notes. Of course, we spoke about honesty, of course, courage and leadership, humility, right? There's that piece around humility to sometimes be willing to say, the way that we've done things before isn't the way we need to do them now. I know Robin spoke as well about that. And then there's this piece around willingness, right? The education and the willingness to step outside of maybe, our little area to educate and raise the vibration for all of us. So incredible conversation. I want to thank you again for being with us. You've been listening to, almost forgot what I was going to say next, Arizona TechCast, brought to you by Phoenix Business Radio, of course, right here with Business RadioX. Today's AZ TechCast was brought to you by Arizona Commerce Authority, the state's leading economic development organization with a streamlined mission to grow and strengthen Arizona's economy. So we thank you again, Arizona Commerce Authority. And many thanks as well to JDH Insights, the 2022 Tech Advocate sponsor. Visit jdhinsights.com to enhance leadership and improve team dynamics to take your business to the next level. And if you're interested in being a podcast participant or sponsor for the Council's AZ TechCast, please contact marketing@aztechcouncil.org to learn about opportunities to further position you as a tech expert, influencer, and innovator. Again, I'm Karen Nowicki. Thanks for listening, and we'll hear you and see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of AZ TechCast with Arizona Technology Council, featuring leading tech and business experts that help influence and shape our great state and the industries they serve.